Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's in-depth ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, in this video, we normally cover the long-range content first, and we're going to do that today. But if you're really just interested in the highly impactful winter storm that's going to be setting up from the southern plains all the way through parts of the eastern Great Lakes, just fast forward a bit in the video, and we'll get to discussing that. Because right now we have winter storm watches across several states stretching again from the southern plains all the way here into New York. We've just seen the issuance of winter storm warnings and a patch right through here. Now, what I'm thinking about with this particular setup is the changeover in the flow that we have seen, because much of the month of January has been dominated with this pattern. And what it's favored is ridging off the west coast right in through here. So you're looking at the jet stream level winds for the month of January compared to normal. See, these are anomalies. So we've had a lot of flow doing this, and that's what's really set us up with a lot of convergent upper level flow, meaning that we get subsidence, drier conditions, higher pressure. So multiple Arctic highs have come through here and they've swept down into the southeast. Now the problem with this pattern is that the anomalous flow is coming from the east across California. And that's one of the big reasons why the month of January so far has been extremely dry for parts of California and Nevada and pockets throughout the Four Corners states. We've also seen the drought expand in parts of the southern plains and in the lower Mississippi River Valley. We are dry in places here in the, in this part of the Midwest toward the Great Lakes. Now, just thinking about all of this, and also there's a drier swath in through here, will the upcoming pattern shift that's going to give us this big winter storm be a long-term break in this, or is this something we're going to return to the pattern that just gave us this? We got to answer those questions. So another way to look at this is just looking at ranks. So this would be the total precipitation ranks by climate district so far for the month of January. And again, we can highlight those regions, but I just want to point out several places in California and Nevada have had their driest. This is their driest January on record at this point. And again, we've been dry in this part of the northern and central plains and also the southern plains, very dry at times. But we're going to be watching an area right into the middle here that's going to change quite a bit in the coming days, where we have made some corrections on the drought, and this was pretty well forecast, has been right in this area. In fact, since we just mentioned that, I said pretty well forecast, how well did the models do predicting this, right? Why don't we go take a quick look at that? This was the early January prediction for the precipitation anomalies. And again, found this drier region in through here. Look, we even had the above normal precipitation through this area, but drier in the southern plains through the Midwest and Great Lakes with above average precip in that area. So I look at this and I come back and say, well, this is what actually happened. If you just take a moment and kind of compare the two, you can see the models actually picked up on this pattern fairly well and predicted pretty well through the month of January and into early February. Now, this past weekend, of course, we saw the big nor'easter that came through and changed the snow, especially on coastal New England, from basically Delaware through New Jersey, and eventually all the way through Boston, which set a new, or at least tied a record, and into Maine. Outside of that, though, we didn't see much overall change in our snow map through this point in the year. So this, again, is snow totals to date. And what we will be seeing, though, in the coming days is some major changes to this, especially for this region right in through here. We're going to talk about that in depth in just a few moments. Major snowstorm coming through there. But as I look at this overall, I'm still picking up on several holes, especially as you get back into this corridor here, this stretching to a big part of Nebraska into South Dakota that still needs to pick up quite a bit of snow, because when you look at it compared to average, that's a large region in through here where we are still sitting in pretty sizable deficits compared to normal. Now I come over to Tennessee and Kentucky, parts of North and South Carolina, Virginia. There are areas in here that have picked up, remember those big early season snowstorm events that really added up in that area. But we're about to make some major shifts in through here. And this is going to be very important because of what it's going to do to our drought monitor. And I showed this last Thursday, so this is the update we had a week ago. But remember, we are watching very carefully throughout the rest of spring to see if this area right in through here, which has expanded in drought over the last 3 months, is going to continue to do so. We got to make some major headway on this drought here in the next about 60 hours, especially into this region where it's been extremely dry and the soil moisture values are so low. But we need to see a lot more improvement in the southern plains as we move forward. Now, to get that improvement, it is all about getting the flow to come out of the southwest. You need southwest jet stream flow, not what we've been seeing, which has been mostly flow like that. Keep that in the back of your mind, okay? From here, I think the bigger factors controlling the weather pattern are still coming out of the tropics. I don't see any other teleconnections that are as dominant as what's going on in the tropics. And I want to give you my latest update here. So our La Niña continues to fade as predicted. It's already fading a lot over here in the Central Pacific, but it still has a good foothold here over in the eastern side of the Pacific. We still have the colder water that's in place here in the Gulf of Alaska. Now, this fading La Niña is allowing the MJO to start to shift around and do some things we haven't really seen it do in a very long time. And what I'm talking about here is best seen in this particular style diagram called the Hovmuller Diagram, where here's today, and this goes through the next 15 days. Now, what I want you to focus in on is this region right in through here. Now, in last week's video, we did see that the MJO was shifting around, and I mentioned that it was going to hover over probably phase 5. But some of the newest data suggest it's going to actually move over to the Indian Ocean. That's going to be our best rising motion, MJO phase 3. And a lot of this is due to some of the changes in the behavior of the trade winds. We got these trade winds really pushing hard here, giving us our best rising motion in this area, and that's sitting back here over this part of the Indian Ocean. Now, what we know about that is that some of the forecast models, instead of taking the MJO and curling it out through phase 5, which is near Australia, or even into phase 4, which is also near Australia, the newest data suggests it comes out over phase 3. Now, why do we care about this? Well, when we put the best convection, the biggest storms in this part of the Indian Ocean, it affects the momentum transport out of the tropics, which ultimately affects the jet stream. That's why we look at this teleconnection. And what we've learned by looking at this for a long time is that should the MJO, when there is a La Niña, come out into phase 3, this is a favored pattern. And again, it favors a ridge that backs up to the Aleutian Islands. It favors a jet stream track that likes to come into the northwest, dip into the central United States, and then run up over a ridge in this area. Now, it doesn't mean the pattern looks like this every day, but it's going to favor more of this style. The critical factor in this long-range forecast is whether or not we can actually get the ridge to retreat back over the Aleutian Islands. We've seen time and time again, especially through the month of January, where forecasts have attempted to do that and failed. So we have to call into question, is it really going to occur? The greater this thing can pop out, let's look at it again, into high amplitude phase 3, the more of a dominant signal it will become, and the better our chances are of seeing this pattern. Again, last week I thought we'd come out in phase 5, but now it appears that there's a stronger chance that we're going to come out in phase 3. So what does that mean? Well, I'll just turn here to the National Weather Service first. Now, they released this on the 28th, but interestingly enough, their models picked up on here and their analysis picked up on the presence of some sort of southeastern ridge and maybe better troughing into the northwest. So you get these colder temperatures, you got to have troughs coming through. That also would help promote the above average precipitation, and Montana is a place that needs this. Now, waves eject into the Ohio River Valley, the central Mississippi River Valley, coming up into the eastern Great Lakes, and that's consistent as well. And many of these systems might actually return better moisture to the lower Mississippi River Valley and into the east. So I'm looking here at what the National Weather Service released, and I can buy into it. But I can also just show you that they are really in line well with the newest data that just came out from the European model. Now I'm looking all the way out here at the last 30 days in this run. So this would be from February 18th all the way to March 18th. Again, with the lack of a good subtropical component of the jet stream, this isn't going to be what we want it to be for California. What could change this is if the MJO really goes into phase 3, pushing that ridge here, then we do end up getting the flow that can dip down far enough south to bring more snow throughout the month of March and late February for that matter into northern California. But no subtropical jet means we just rob that flow coming from Hawaii to hit the rest of California. Now with this pattern setting up, it will continue to produce troughs that move through this area, giving us that active Ohio River Valley storm track. I do believe the models are too dry down here along the Gulf Coast, and we need to watch very carefully how each of these systems comes off of the mountains. The further to the south they come off of the mountains, the better the flow comes out of the southwest around the trough, and the more moisture we draw into Texas, helping to relieve this drought. You're going to see a classic example of that here in just a few moments, all right? But overall, this is the new outlook we have for mid-February to mid-March at this point. It's going to be predicated on that fading La Niña letting the MJO take control of the pattern, because the stuff going on in the polar regions of the planet are not the dominant teleconnection based upon what I've seen so far. All right, That's your long range. Let's come back to what we need to discuss, which is this winter storm. We've now seen several states take on winter storm watches, and this was released in the afternoon on Monday, a large area through here where they've already issued winter storm warnings. This is well ahead of this system, which is going to take off tomorrow night on Tuesday night and last through the day on Thursday. Now, this region was highlighted because some of the midday model runs are showing this for the probability of certain depths of snow. So let's take a look at it carefully. What's setting this all up is there's a low that's going to come out right here, spreading the snow you see here through the Canadian prairie, and it's going to go up toward the Hudson Bay. I was talking with my colleague Andrew Pritchard, and the unfortunate problem with the flow that comes over the mountains like this is that this part of southern Alberta to Saskatchewan misses out on all of this. Same thing in through this part of the northern plains. But as that low comes curling up here into the Hudson Bay, we have a big area of high pressure that comes in behind it. And it's going to drape an Arctic front that's going to sit just like this, okay? So the Arctic air comes sliding underneath this while overrunning hits the top of it. That's where we have mid-level wind flow from about a mile above our heads, and above that, that overruns that Arctic front. And this is where the heaviest snows are expected to line up. So the map I've been drawn on, probability of getting at least 3 inches. And you can see up here, this is the 80 to 99% chance. Now let's just step up an amount. This is the probability of getting at least 6 inches. So we got a few areas outside of the mountains in the west here that we're seeing that. But we have almost, 100% chance of going over 6 inches of snow in this corridor from this part of Missouri through Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, and northern Ohio. That also gets into this region of Ontario, like London, Ontario, and through here on into this part of Quebec. But let's go up another 6 inches, and we'll look at the probability of getting a foot of snow. When you look very carefully at this, we have a large area in through here that's got better than a 50% chance. In fact, match up the colors. This is in the 60 to 70% chance of picking up 12 inches of snow based off of the European ensemble. So that includes central and eastern Illinois through the northern part of Indiana into that corner of Michigan and Ohio. All right. Now, from there, what I want to do is show you the ice potential. And to do that, we're going to look at it a couple different ways. The first way is going to come from the WPC. That's part of the National Weather Service. What you're looking at here is the probability over the next 3 days of picking up at least 1/10 of an inch of ice. And you can see from eastern Oklahoma through parts of northern Arkansas, southern Missouri, getting into southern Illinois, there's going to be a track in through here where we're going to have a significant ice storm, one that is quite crippling. And I was talking with a group earlier today. To be honest with you, of all the different types of severe weather that is out there, ice storms are one of the most destructive and costly, and also one of the most kind of threatening to just human livelihood. So I'm very concerned about this and how much ice we do get out of this. Now, the setup. I want to start you up in the jet stream level. Part of the reason why this is a multi-day event is because the jet stream splits in the Gulf of Alaska. See that? And that split right in through this area means that nothing is just pushing this trough quickly. In fact, the flow is very much coming almost out of the north here, digging it down, but there's no strong winds rounding the base of this trough. So this particular branch of the jet stream here and here don't have a lot of reason to just move very quickly across the country. That's what's helping make this a multi-day event. But unlike what we typically talk about where we have a deep low that forms and spins across the country, that's not what this system is. You ready? What we're going to do here is we're going to zoom in and take a look at the low-level wind field. Now, this is where we're getting all of those wind warnings and wind advisories in the northern plains. Strong southerly winds out ahead of this, but watch, we're just going to step ahead with time. I'm going to get you through the first, and let's stop it here very early in the morning on Groundhog's Day. Now, what you're looking at here is just one of my kind of most favorite weather patterns. There's a ridge here, got it? There's an upper level trough there. And right in through here, I'm going to highlight this line. That is what you call the deformation zone, or the axis of deformation. And so you get flow that comes up and it turns like that. Comes up and it makes a turn like this. And in the Arctic side of it, it comes down and curls around like that. Now, what's the significance of this? You have very warm air full of moisture meeting very cold air that's very dry. And the cold air undercuts this. It goes underneath the warm air aloft and gives us what we call overrunning. This deformation zone that you see here is the main culprit for the multi-day winter storm event we're about to experience, because we will not see a low curl up in this pattern and race on off to the north and east. It's not the right setup to make that occur. So again, we're going to look for this area to having our heaviest snow band along that deformation axis, but it stretches back much farther to that with lower snowfall amounts. Now, to put it all together in one big image, remember the flow avoiding the west is going to continue to be dry. But what we end up having, there we go, comes in like this, so it splits and sets up right there. We're going to be talking about thunderstorms and a very heavy rainfall here. There'll be an ice storm tucked in the middle and the heaviest snow bands coming in multiple rounds on the northern side of this. I want to start you off with one of the high resolution models. This is the 18Z NAM, so this was run this afternoon. And if we go through this evening on Monday, this is 7 p.m. going into early morning hours. What I want you to watch first is the low that's coming across the Canadian prairie here. See it? That's the low that's moving up toward the Hudson Bay eventually. And now you can see the front that it's going to leave. See it right in through there? That's the upper level front. There's the surface front. They're lined up together. So what you end up having behind this, let's just play it forward a little bit here. There we go. I'll stop you right here. This is 10 p.m. Tuesday night. Here's your Arctic high, settling in. So that's what's bringing the cold air in. And you're going to watch this change over to snow right in through this backside on Tuesday night. Rain out ahead of it. This is all rain. And we're going to change this over to snow in the overnight hours. Now, finding exactly where that changeover is going to be is the most difficult thing for us to do at this point. You see that the pinks indicate ice in here, forming right in this part of Missouri, back in Oklahoma and Kansas, and snow on the back side of it going back to Colorado. This will be a region just north of it that's going to get the heaviest snows lasting for the longest time. Because as we go through the overnight hours on Tuesday night to Wednesday morning, and then play this out through midday, this is now midday Wednesday, going forward to Wednesday afternoon and evening, going forward into Wednesday night. Can you see it? The models are predicting an area right in through here where there is the potential for significant ice accumulation. North of it, heavy snow. And by the way, this is just the first round that I've shown you so far. The open wave is still coming through. And you notice there's actually no closed low pressure isobars in here. This is all overrunning based on this big Arctic high coming through. So where does it go from there? Well, we got to switch over to our other two models, the GFS 12Zs on the left and the Europeans on the right. Now let me take you back to the start of this and show you where these two models go. So we've seen already the low, the clipper that goes through the Canadian prairie, and in both the GFS and the Euro, sits right over the top of the Hudson Bay. So there is the front, and it is in both models. This is Tuesday night. As we get into the overnight hours on Tuesday into early in the morning, you can see they both have the ice in the relatively in the same position and the heaviest snow on the backside in the same position on Wednesday morning. So then we go into Wednesday midday, Wednesday afternoon, and Wednesday overnight. And again, we're going to see rounds of storms coming through the south. We're going to get this ice in through here, and we're setting up for early Thursday morning the second push of snow that comes through. The GFS is much more aggressive on bringing more snow into Texas. The European has an ice area in through here with snow on the backside and heavy rain over the south. And as we see this playing forward, this is now 6 p.m. Thursday night Central Time, getting into the overnight hours. This then pushes into New England. The front tries to clear the coast. You're going to see both models push it through there. And this is now getting us out to Friday night and eventually into Saturday morning. That's when the front clears. So this is that's 5 days we just watched here, getting us all the way to Saturday morning. Now what happens after that is another clipper, it's in both models, runs right here across the Canadian prairie. And we end up seeing that in the GFS, it has a deeper trough that comes out of the lower Mississippi River Valley, making another storm system here. It's farther to the south and east in the European, but this is all the way out this next Sunday. So we have to see how the first system goes through before we can really take note of this particular event. All right, I want to give you some numbers on all of this. We're going to start off with the 12Z Euro. We're going to use a 10-to-1 snow ratio. That means for every 1 inch of liquid, we get 10 inches of snow. And as we play this forward from the 12Z Euro, we're just watching snow add up. So why don't we pause it right here? This is midday on Wednesday. So we got our heaviest snow corridor lining up in this area. As I let this play on through, I'm just going to take it out 84 hours. That gets us all the way out there to Thursday night. Now the models, remember, they're going to struggle with how much snow to give you because this 10-to-1 snow ratio may not be accurate, especially if in this area right in through here, we have a mixture of sleet coming in first. The sleet is not 10 to 1. It's maybe 3 to 1. It's all ice pellets. On the northern side of it, so there will be areas that will pick up between 5 and 20 inches of snow in through here. On the backside, absolutely love to see this 2 to 4 inch snowfall event, maybe 2 to 6 inch snowfall event back here in the southern plains, returning some moisture. Now from here, let's go right over to the GFS. We've got the 18C GFS in, and it is very aggressive on the snowfall in this area, as you can see. Okay, some places in here possibly picking up, well in excess of 15 inches. Now, does the model again struggle with the proper conversion from rain over to freezing rain, sleet, and then snow? It doesn't. It's gonna miss that. And remember, we're including some sleet in this forecast. But there are other models we can look at. Let's go now look at how about the 12-kilometer NAM? This one, of course, runs out that far too, and we can see as we look out here, same area identified with that very heavy snowfall band and very similar amounts on the backside. The Germans run a model as well. It's called the ICON model. Here's what they've got over that time period. So we're just kind of stacking these up, looking at the total snowfall amounts. And everyone's asking me, I've gotten about 50 phone calls today, is it possible that we see this much from Missouri into Illinois and Indiana? And the answer is yes, because this is not your typical deep low. This is actually a system that pulls off with that deformation zone and just blankets this area with multiple rounds of snow. That's what we've got here. Now I'm going to take your discussion over. Let's go back to the European. I'm going to take this discussion over to a discussion on ice. So instead, let's flip this down here to freezing rain. And this is what I really don't like seeing. From just north of Dallas, getting through this part of Oklahoma, Arkansas, southern Missouri, southern Illinois, right on the Ohio River, the European models, I really identified a large area where there is the threat for an ice storm. Now that would be ice accumulations greater than 1/4 of an inch, and I'm just concerned that we might see a large area with that occurring based upon some of the current model forecasts. So we're going to have to just monitor this in real time as it sets off to go here. Now, we need to flip this back over to a discussion on total precipitation. So let's just look at that as well. In parts of Texas, desperate rainfall. This is 1 to 2 inches here. Into Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, we're picking up a lot of rainfall in a drier area. Who doesn't need it is Tennessee and Kentucky, but they're looking at this will be a switchover in through here. Very tricky forecast in western Kentucky and Tennessee for ice versus snow versus rain. We're going to keep a very close eye on this region as well. So that's the middle part of the storm system. Remember, it eventually moves into the east. I'm just going to give you a couple of numbers here on the east. So why don't we just leave it on the European model? Let's go back over to our snowfall forecast and put together what we think is going to come into parts of like this section of Ontario, getting into western New York. And again, we're looking here at snowfall totals that could really add up along that deformation zone. So let's monitor this carefully and watch it throughout the week, and then see how this pattern changes into week 2. Because the models right now by February 10th, they've not yet moved this ridge back over to the Aleutian Islands. It's still sitting here. And in fact, the flow is getting a little bunched up here, a little blocked, almost like a high over low or even an omega pattern setting up in the west. This is going to send troughs pretty deep, and they're going to run along the coast, which means we're going to look at a wet pattern in through here and possibly up the east coast. But I also see this as setting up an active track in through here as well. Now, the European model favors drier in through here, but I think we've overdone it. I think there's actually going to be more active weather coming through the Ohio River Valley again into next week. But to see better precipitation with that trough sitting here in Texas where we've got drought moving along the Gulf Coast, I like it. But this has to back up. That's the result of the ridge. It's got to be here. And then we return the moisture to the west. All right, that's precip. Now let's talk about temperatures, because today was extremely warm in the midsection of the United States. And as we play this forward, watch how the changes are going to go from Monday into Tuesday. This is the warm sector opening up, high temperatures. Wednesday, the Arctic air that started in Tuesday in Montana will now advance very quickly here to St. Louis, all the way down here into the south. That's Wednesday into Thursday. Now the warm sector opens up into the Carolinas up the East Coast. We're going to drop temperatures here that started off in the 60s, almost 70, down to 16 in Lubbock. That's where we're taking those temperatures. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Mild air comes on downslope flow here after this event. Beyond that, the day 5 through 10, the models do finally agree on this. And yes, it was the European that had this right all along. What is different is this area is showing up with a cold bias because of the snow that's expected to get put in here. but mild coming off the prairie. See that? When we get out there a bit farther, this is now day 10 through 15. This is the 12Z GFS, and look at the differences between the GFS out here and the European. Much more mild in the European. It's trying to back the ridge up, good, but it's not digging in any sort of deep trough. So when you don't have a lot of north-south flow coming across the United States, we don't tend to get the colder air stuck into place. That means some of that moisture that just came with this event could melt in this area, get into the soil, which would be very good. What I do not see any sort of a disruption in the polar vortex. It is strong and steady and stable and sitting right over Svalbard, which is this island right here. Now, just considering this, the strength of the polar vortex is approaching near record highs. Unlike a year ago when it was majorly disrupted throughout January and early February, we're not there. There's one last thing I want to cover in this video. It's a bit of international weather. And what I wanted to show you is, while we've got this cold shot coming through the US, much of Europe is not seeing that. In fact, it's quite warm throughout Russia. We got cooler weather in Australia. That's because it's looking to be very wet through the central part of Australia as well. We're putting out quite a bit of moisture in Eastern Europe, north of the Black Sea, and across the Russian wheat belt as well. I got a whole other video coming to you about South America. So with that, I'm just going to wrap it up here, and hopefully that this lets you know that this forecast is still going to evolve, but this is our best estimate through Monday evening. I'll talk to you again on Thursday. Thanks.